Welcome to Hopeful Moments 1. Have you ever encountered those people who believe they can manipulate others to achieve their goals? The schemers and connivers who are always ready to lie, manipulate, or even exploit the kindness of others without hesitation. They think they're smarter than everyone else, that people are nothing more than puppets in their hands. But life isn't always as easy as they imagine. Today, we're going to explore a dramatic and satisfying story, a lesson for anyone who believes that cunning tricks and deceit can help them control everything. A woman cleverly exploits others' trust to benefit herself, turning herself into a victim to gain sympathy and favor. But she has no idea that this time, she's facing a formidable opponent, a person who is not so easily fooled. And the truth is about to be exposed in a way she never expected. Get ready for an astonishing and satisfying unmasking. Don't take your eyes off the screen, because the moment of reckoning is about to begin. Story 1, Karen, the authoritarian manager. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to experience a high-pressure work environment under the management of a woman whom everyone in the company nicknamed Karen. Unlike other professional managers, Karen exhibited extremely negative and irresponsible leadership behaviors. She constantly proclaimed herself as the priceless gift of the company, as if her very existence was indispensable to the organization. From the way she spoke to her actions, Karen was always arrogant, haughty, and dismissive of those around her. One of her most shocking actions was her willingness to throw away employees' personal belongings without hesitation. Handbags, coffee cups, water glasses, all became targets for Karen's ruthless actions, justified by her claim that they shouldn't be left lying around. While this excuse might seem reasonable from an orderliness perspective, anyone who values privacy and personal respect knows that discarding someone else's possessions is completely unacceptable in a professional work environment. This behavior not only showed her lack of sensitivity but also served as a means for her to assert her power in an authoritarian manner, with no regard for the feelings of her employees. But she didn't stop there. Karen continuously added pressure on the entire team by assigning extra work from previous shifts when the staffing was already short. When the personnel situation became tense, instead of rearranging the workload reasonably or proposing support measures, she forced employees to complete an unmanageable amount of work. Every time someone complained about not having enough time to finish their tasks, Karen immediately ordered that employees forego their break times, even skipping lunch if necessary, under the guise of keeping up with work. She accepted no excuses or justifications from anyone. In fact, whenever someone dared to speak up, she would insist, "I've worked 40 years straight without a break, so why do you all need one?" This remark not only reflected her selfish attitude but also demonstrated her utter disregard for the health and rights of those working under her. Faced with Karen's oppressive and inappropriate leadership, I felt I could no longer remain silent. I decided to send a detailed email outlining the situation to the general manager, his assistant, the union representative, and even the union president. In that email, I clearly and specifically detailed how Karen treated the employees, from her throwing away our personal belongings to forcing us to work without proper breaks. Although I did not receive an immediate direct response, the email system showed that many people had read my message, which prompted me to warn that if I did not receive a proper response within a week, I would forward the entire email to the Department of Labor and the Human Rights Council to protect the employees' rights. Soon after, I received 2 clear responses, one from the union representative, affirming their disagreement with Karen's behavior, and another from the general manager, who promised to review and resolve the issue. The next day, when I arrived for my shift, I noticed Karen appeared completely stressed. She was standing by the reporting area and explained that the general manager had issued a new policy requiring employees to sign off on their break times, otherwise, she would have to pay overtime. Then she pulled me aside and, in a somewhat severe tone, asked why someone had reported that she was making fun of the break times. I replied frankly, "A joke only makes sense when everyone laughs. But when you mock our break times and throw away our belongings, even you can't laugh at it." That response served as a sharp reminder, clearly exposing the contradiction in her behavior. And just 3 days later, Karen resigned, citing too much stress as her reason. It was a paradoxical end, considering she once prided herself on never taking breaks and working ceaselessly. Throughout this entire story, it's clear that authoritarian leadership, lack of respect for employees, and dismissing others' rights not only create a toxic work environment but also bring about unforeseen consequences for the very leader involved. Karen's conduct became a valuable lesson in the necessity of compassion, respect, and listening in any work environment. Lessons learned from the story. Respecting employees is key to a healthy work environment. Leaders must treat employees with respect and fairness. Abusive, dismissive, and coercive behaviors like Karen's not only harm employees' morale but also have negative repercussions for the entire organization. Listen to and address employee feedback. When employees raise concerns about workplace issues, management should listen and take timely corrective actions. Ignoring employee feedback only increases dissatisfaction and tension within the workplace. Respect the rights and health of employees. Forcing employees to skip breaks, overwork, or perform unreasonable tasks violates their rights and negatively affects both their performance and well-being. A proper labor policy must protect the health and rights of workers. Authoritarian leadership is unsustainable. A management style based on coercion and personal imposition is likely to breed resistance and loss of trust among employees. In the end, leaders who fail to listen will face the consequences of their actions. Employee rights contribute to sustainable business growth. When employees feel respected and valued, they are motivated to give their best, thereby creating a positive, efficient work environment that contributes to the overall success of the company. Story 2: Conflict at the Garden Center. When I was 18, I began working at a supermarket that also featured a small garden center located behind the store. At first, I was assigned to work at the cash register, a rather dull and repetitive job, but motivated by the prospect of making quick money, I accepted the position without much thought. After about 3 months, when the garden center began facing a staffing shortage, the management asked me to volunteer to work there. It was a pleasant surprise. The garden center was full of a cheerful, friendly, and enthusiastic atmosphere among colleagues, a stark contrast to the tense environment at the cash register. At the garden center, I was assigned to a manager named John, who had previously owned his own garden center. John was not only knowledgeable about the job but also always caring, supportive, and generous with his experience, passing on practical knowledge and essential skills in plant care and garden management. The 3 months I spent working with John were filled with valuable lessons and memorable experiences that helped me mature in my role. However, when John left the company, I decided to apply for his managerial position based on his recommendation and encouragement. But at the last minute, the company unexpectedly decided to merge the garden center with the cash register department and assigned a new manager named Alice, who currently managed the counter on the other side of the store. Although I felt a bit frustrated for not being chosen for the position I had long dreamed of, I had no choice but to accept the situation since I only had a few months left before my contract ended. During my time working under Alice, everything ran quite smoothly and calmly. Alice allowed employees the freedom to work independently and trusted us with responsibilities such as handling transactions and performing inventory counts in the same way John had taught us. The work environment seemed stable, and employees felt empowered by the autonomy in their tasks. However, an unexpected event occurred one weekend when a new manager named Karen appeared. Karen always carried an air as if she had just endured a personal crisis, with a hateful attitude and an authoritarian demeanor towards everyone around her. Instead of coming directly to me to discuss work matters, she frequently went to the counter on her own, demanding reports and continuously inquiring about work status unnecessarily. Although I tried to lighten the mood with silly jokes like, "We've sold 5 spruces already, Karen, maybe it's time to pay the electric bill," or "Can someone tell me when the bonus is coming?" These efforts were met with cold responses, with hardly any sign of a smile from her. After several weeks of working together, Karen became increasingly aggressive and domineering. One day, she unexpectedly showed up at the garden center, an area she rarely visited before, and announced that a customer had complained about the condition of the men's restroom. She immediately ordered me to leave my administrative tasks and go clean that area. According to our employment contract, cleaning duties only applied to certain designated areas, and this task was already assigned to the supermarket's dedicated cleaning crew. I couldn't understand why it was my responsibility. So, I suggested that I would call the cleaning team to handle it while I continued with my administrative work. However, Karen angrily retorted, "I told you to do it. If I wanted someone else to do it, I would have asked them. This task is part of your contract. Even if you aren't paid extra for administrative work, you still must complete your duties." Her words rang out like an unyielding command, leaving me feeling coerced and stripped of my autonomy. As I proceeded to the restroom area to carry out the cleaning, a plan for a subtle act of retaliation began forming in my mind. Typically, at the end of the day, after finishing my work at the garden center, I would process the cash collection and inventory reports, then leave all the reports and collected funds for the general manager, GM, to pick up on Monday, since the GM did not work on weekends. But this time, following Karen's orders, I refused to perform those administrative procedures and simply closed up and went home. On Sunday, I also skipped the inventory reporting as usual, believing that it was an administrative task that Karen had forbidden me from doing. At around 10 a.m. on Monday, I was summoned to the GM's office. When I walked in, I saw Karen standing there with an extremely angry expression beside the GM, who was sternly questioning why the cash collection and inventory reports had not been completed over the weekend. I explained frankly. Karen told me that I wasn't allowed to do administrative work. She insisted that it was her responsibility, while I was merely helping out as John had taught me. The GM pressed for confirmation, leaving Karen flustered and with no way to justify her actions. Finally, the GM gently concluded, "Thank you, you may go now." A few weeks after this incident, Alice announced that Karen was only a temporary weekend manager. Following the incident, she was reassigned to work at the cash register, returning to a role with fewer authoritative demands. Through the entire chain of events, I realized that the shift in management style and the unnecessary pressure from Karen created conflicts and negatively affected administrative operations. However, my own actions demonstrated that when forced into tasks beyond one's designated responsibilities, everyone can find a way to assert their will and principles. Lessons learned from the story. Defining job boundaries. Each position has its own scope and duties as defined by the contract. When a manager assigns tasks outside the stipulated responsibilities, employees should know how to respectfully refuse or raise concerns in a professional manner. The importance of clear communication. Effective communication between employees and management is essential to avoid misunderstandings. Karen's failure to directly communicate with me, opting instead to issue orders unilaterally, led to unnecessary conflict and tension. Protecting personal rights. When forced to perform tasks outside of one's official responsibilities, employees have the right to speak up and demand resolution. Reporting the issue to the GM and using internal feedback channels helped address the situation. Flexibility and adaptability. Even if the initial job is not exactly what one expected, there is always an opportunity to learn and adapt to a new environment. The changes from John to Alice and then to Karen illustrate that the work environment is ever evolving and requires high adaptability. Fair and professional management. Karen's management style demonstrated that imposing orders without respecting established work processes can result in negative consequences for the entire team. A good manager should listen, assign tasks reasonably, and create conditions for employees to perform at their best. Feedback systems and complaint resolution channels. Using email to report issues and receiving support from the GM and union representatives underscores the importance of having effective internal communication and feedback channels to protect employees' rights. Story 3: The new manager ignores complaints. At around 9:32 a.m., amid the busy atmosphere of the company, a newcomer, a business investor appointed to a management position, officially appeared. From the very first moments, he demonstrated an extremely authoritarian and uncompromising leadership style. He seemed determined to control every aspect of the company's operations his own way, eliminating immediately any activity he considered a waste of time. With a decisive and unyielding attitude, he did not tolerate any deviation from the established workflow, thereby creating an environment that demanded absolute compliance from employees. After only 1 week of observation, together with the other managers, he organized an all-company meeting to rearrange the outstanding issues. However, this meeting did not create any space for dialogue or for listening to employees' contributions. During the meeting, in a stern and resolute tone, he asserted, "If I want your opinions, I will ask. You do not get to offer them," as a way to affirm his absolute power. In doing so, he emphasized that all decisions had already been made and that employees were merely required to follow orders without any questioning or feedback. At the same time, the company was also facing a serious problem, a high turnover rate. Many employees complained that the actual work was not what was originally described. They believed that when they were hired, they would be performing customer service tasks, handling emails, and answering phones. Instead, they ended up spending most of their time working in a hot warehouse, continuously packing orders, a task that demands physical effort and is mentally exhausting. I relayed these complaints to the management in hopes of clarifying the real reasons behind the high turnover. However, the information I provided only made the new manager even angrier, as if any opinion contrary to his viewpoint was considered a betrayal. Not long after, he organized another meeting, this time with the purpose of giving advice that was clearly unsolicited by the employees. In a private conversation, he accused me of implying that the high turnover meant the company had deceived its hires, as if I were attacking the organization's reputation. I tried to explain that I was simply conveying the genuine feelings of the employees, without any intention of harming the company's image. However, he completely disregarded my explanation, insisting, "If I want to hear your input, I will ask. I'm the boss, I give orders, and you all just have to follow them. Don't even try to comment on how I run or improve the work. Focus on your own tasks and let me handle mine." His words not only revealed his arrogance but also demonstrated the closed-minded nature of an authoritarian leader who does not accept any form of dissent. Despite all this, the working conditions did not improve. Not only did I decide to leave, but 2 other employees also resigned because they could no longer tolerate such an oppressive and unfair work environment. Moreover, a new employee, who had joined the company about 5 weeks earlier, continuously complained about not being assigned work appropriately in a sweltering warehouse and having to pack orders for hours on end. Instead of choosing to quit, he became increasingly frustrated until, eventually, he could no longer control his emotions. I was working upstairs when I suddenly heard a loud crashing noise, a heavy sound of objects being smashed echoing throughout the area. When I went downstairs to check, I witnessed an unbelievable scene. That new employee was frantically smashing customers' packages, leaving behind chaos reminiscent of an animated cartoon, while several other colleagues gathered around, utterly astonished by his actions. Immediately after the commotion, the new manager quickly appeared on the scene. With a stern expression, he decided that the employee in question would be fired on the spot. When I was asked why I hadn't immediately reported this incident, I explained that, previously, when I had shared employees' complaints, he had accused me of rambling and advised me to stop talking nonsense and let him handle the situation because he was the boss. Although the incident embarrassed him in front of all the colleagues, I was also reprimanded for focusing too much on the issue, as if caring about and reporting employees' problems were a fault. Looking back, even though the adjustments in inventory levels and the damages of about $10,000 due to the smashed items, along with some items valued at up to $22,000 each, somehow repaid the authoritarian and inflexible actions of the new manager, the entire series of events not only reveals an authoritarian and uncompromising leadership style but also reflects shortcomings in communication, management, and listening to employees' opinions. These factors led to significant economic losses and widespread discontent within the company. Lessons learned from this story. Authoritarian leadership has negative effects. When a manager imposes their opinions and tightly controls every activity without giving employees the opportunity to contribute, the work environment becomes stifling and unproductive, leading to discontent and a loss of trust among staff. Lack of two-way communication. The meeting that failed to open a space for dialogue demonstrates the importance of listening and exchanging ideas between management and employees. Not allowing staff to share their opinions and perspectives can lead to misunderstandings and imbalances in the workplace. The impact of work pressure on employee morale. When work pressure is not managed properly, employees may feel overwhelmed, leading to outbursts that can cause both emotional and financial harm to the company. Managers must be flexible and responsive. A rigid approach and an inability to respond appropriately to employees' feedback only exacerbate tension and result in unintended consequences, such as increased turnover. The value of timely feedback and communication. Employees' insights about workplace conditions need to be heard and addressed promptly to prevent negative impacts from spreading. Timely feedback from leadership can help resolve issues before they escalate into a full-blown crisis. Firing is not always the solution. While firing an employee after an outburst might seem like a quick fix, if the underlying issues of poor communication and management are not addressed, the root problems will persist and continue to cause long-term damage to the company. Story 4: The Incident at the Phone Store. Previously, I worked at a phone store where I accumulated over 5 years of valuable experience and was repeatedly recognized as Employee of the Month. During those years, I honed my communication skills, learned how to handle various situations, and delivered professional customer service. However, everything started to change when a new manager, recruited through a modern university recruitment program, joined the store's leadership, even though, in reality, there were many long-time employees with over 15 years of experience. From the very beginning, the new manager exhibited a leadership style that was quite different from what we were accustomed to. She frequently monitored every step of the employee's work, especially mine, and did not hesitate to criticize every single moment of our performance. What was even more disheartening was that, despite being in a management position, she had never actually worked at the cash register, a role that involves direct customer interactions. This lack of first-hand experience gradually rendered her criticisms baseless and emotionally damaging to those of us who worked diligently. As tensions grew because many employees could no longer tolerate her authoritarian behavior, quite a few colleagues decided to leave their jobs. One morning, due to the insufficient number of remaining staff, I was forced to open the store by myself. Meanwhile, the new manager was busy roaming the floor, preoccupied with greeting customers without offering any support or assistance during this critical time. The climax of my discontent occurred when about 10 customers had been waiting for a long time, and I had to handle the situation alone. Under mounting pressure, the manager approached me with a sour tone and demanded that I step to the back, asking, "Why are you so slow?" as if everything depended solely on my performance. Feeling frustrated and exhausted by the constant criticism, I bluntly stated, "I don't think I can continue working in this environment." My words served as an alarm bell for her, and she not only appeared shocked but also tried to warn me that if I left, I would never be allowed to work at the store again. My reaction, although it could be seen as rebellious or an act of retaliation, was, for me, a way of asserting my resistance against unfair criticism and unnecessary pressure. At that moment, I took out the store key, a symbol of responsibility and control over the work, and handed it directly to the manager, as a clear statement that she should take full responsibility for the store's operations. This action not only surprised her but also intensified the tense atmosphere around us. After handing over the key, I left the store and stepped away from the workspace, leaning against a public handrail and watching through the window. I witnessed the manager struggling to handle the angry customers, a scene filled with irony, as the very person in charge was unable to manage the situation effectively. I sat there and observed for about 10 more minutes before finally deciding to leave the store for good. For me, leaving was not just a rejection of a toxic work environment, it was also a subtle act of retribution against the continuous pressure and unfair criticism from an unsympathetic manager. After all the years of dedication and enduring so much, I felt that she, with her unsympathetic and impractical leadership style, truly deserved to pay the price in the way I chose. Lessons learned from this story. Be independent and dare to defend your rights. When faced with a toxic work environment and unjust criticism from management, my decision to leave demonstrated that walking away can be a powerful way to uphold self-respect and protect one's dignity. Managers must understand and experience employees' work directly. A manager who never directly participates in the actual work and only judges from a distance will make inaccurate and impractical decisions, adversely affecting both employees and overall performance. Leaders must create a supportive and collaborative work environment. Instead of criticizing, managers should encourage and support employees, especially in challenging situations, to foster teamwork and alleviate work pressure. Open and respectful communication is the foundation of a healthy workplace. Feedback and suggestions need to be listened to and handled objectively. An environment that does not allow employees to share their opinions will likely lead to dissatisfaction and a loss of trust in leadership. Retaliatory actions may be the last resort when no other option remains. Sometimes, after enduring excessive pressure and injustice, leaving and distancing yourself from that environment might be the best way to protect yourself and seek opportunities where your value is truly appreciated. Story 5: Violation of labor laws at a fast food store. When I was just 15, I began working at a phone store, and from day one my work schedule was set very strictly. I worked from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., 4 days a week. At first, this job didn't cause much trouble because I always put in effort, smiled, and rarely took sick days. Even sometimes working a few extra minutes to complete an order wasn't an issue. I stayed at that job for a full year and received positive evaluations from my supervisors. However, a serious problem arose that made me extremely frustrated. My manager consistently forced me to work until 2 a.m. This happened because the employees scheduled to relieve me often didn't show up on time, leaving the shift understaffed and forcing me to stay and finish the work. Each time this occurred, I had to wait until nearly 2 a.m. before I could finally go home, and when I arrived home at around 2:15 a.m., I barely had time to grab a light snack before going to sleep. As a result, the lack of sleep severely affected my studies and health, leaving me constantly tired and stressed. The issue became even more serious when my manager continuously demanded that I work beyond the prescribed hours. According to current labor laws, I wasn't allowed to work past 10 p.m., yet the manager insisted, when you accepted this job, you agreed that if needed, you would work overtime. Those words not only made me feel that I was being treated unfairly, but also demonstrated a lack of respect for the rights of the employees. Even though I voiced my objections, the general manager affirmed, according to state law, that I was supposed to stop working at 10 p.m. However, in reality, I was still forced to work until 2 a.m., a clear contradiction between legal regulations and the management practices at the store. In the end, with no other choice, I decided to report this situation to the company's HR department in order to protect not only my rights but also those of my colleagues. At around 9:19 p.m., I was summoned to the office to discuss the issue of working beyond the prescribed hours. During the meeting, after much discussion, by 9:52 p.m. the shift manager came in to apologize on behalf of the company, stating, "We're sorry for having you work overtime. According to the law, you are not allowed to work past 10 p.m. At the same time, the general manager announced that this manager had been fired for not complying with labor laws and that she had potentially caused significant damage to the store. Moreover, we discovered that she had been enforcing a policy that forced many other employees to work overtime on shifts they did not sign up for. Had it not been for my complaint, this situation might have continued, with the manager persisting in making employees work until 2 a.m. Through this entire experience, I not only realized the lack of respect for employees' rights, but also understood that adhering to labor laws is crucial for protecting the health and maintaining the work-life balance of each individual. Lessons learned from the story. Protect your own rights. If you notice that your work environment violates regulations, have the courage to speak up and report it to safeguard your rights. Follow the law. Labor laws are established to protect the health and work-life balance of employees. Failing to comply with these regulations can have severe consequences for both the employees and the organization. The impact of overtime work. Working overtime not only affects your health and quality of life, but can also diminish work performance and negatively impact your studies or other personal commitments. The role of communication in the workplace. clear and transparent communication between management and employees is essential to prevent misunderstandings and workplace conflicts, ensuring that everyone is treated fairly. The necessity of a feedback system. Having an effective system for feedback and handling complaints can improve the work environment and prevent ongoing violations from continuing. Life always demands that we stand up for ourselves and maintain our self-respect, no matter where we are. These stories of authoritarian managers, abuse of power, and forcing employees to work beyond limits show that mutual respect and adherence to legal regulations not only protect individual rights but also contribute to building a healthy and sustainable work environment. Always listen to your inner voice, be brave in sharing and engaging in dialogue when you see injustice, because everyone deserves to be treated fairly and humanely. Don't let pressure and a lack of respect make you lose faith in yourself. Seek opportunities in workplaces where your value is truly appreciated, so that you can grow and fully contribute to a meaningful life. Based on the stories shared, we can conclude that a healthy work environment not only requires professionalism and experience, but also demands respect and fair treatment from leadership. Authoritarian actions, abuse of power, and forcing employees to work beyond their limits not only negatively affect health, morale, and work performance, but also lead to significant economic consequences for the organization. Therefore, protecting employees' rights, maintaining transparent communication, and adhering to legal regulations are essential to build a sustainable and thriving work environment. At the same time, these stories emphasize the importance of self-respect and the courage to stand up for oneself in the face of injustice.